Hello children, today we shall learn about the calling of the civil disobedience movements. So my dear children, in my previous videos lectures, I have explained to you in details that why Gandhiji had launched the civil disobedience movement in India. So my dear children, before launching the civil disobedience movement, Gandhiji had written letter to Lord Irving to fulfill the 11 demands, and when the Lord Irving was unwilling to negotiate with Gandhiji, during that time with the 78 volunteers, Gandhiji went to the Dandi coast, and after going there, he broke the salt law. So my dear children, when Gandhiji had started the civil disobedience movements, during that time, we see that the Satyagrahis who responded the call of Gandhiji, and they started doing the civil disobedience movements by breaking the law of the British government, and at the same time, the Satyagrahis, they did not have any kind of cooperations with the British government. So my dear children, when the civil disobedience movement was continuously in the nations, during that time, the fearful government, the colonial government, who responded the nationalism movements with brutal repressions. And when the government responded the movement with brutal repressions, during that time the movement was going to be very violent. We see the Gandhiji had wanted the peaceful demonstrations. In spite of that, the movement was getting very violent, and due to that, the civil disobedience movement was called up by Gandhiji. So my dear children, here due to certain reasons, the movements was called up. Let us see one by one. The peaceful Satyagrahis, they were attacked, and the women's, the children's, all they were beaten, and nearly 1 lakh people were arrested. And at the same time, the Ghaffar Khan, he was also arrested on April 1930. And here the angry crowd, they demonstrated in Peshawar with a violent incidents, and due to that, these civil disobedience movements was getting very violent. Already I told you that nearly 1 lakh people were arrested, the children, the women were beaten. At the same time, the Ghaffar Khan was arrested. And when such kind of incidents was becoming very violent with the brutal repressions of the British government, during that time the movement was getting very violent in spite of having the peaceful demonstrations in the society. And due to this violent activity, Gandhiji called off the civil disobedience movements, and after he called off the civil disobedience movement, Gandhiji, he entered into the Gandhi-Irving Pact on 5 March 1931. So here, after the calling of the civil disobedience movements, Gandhiji is entering into the Gandhi Pact with Lord Irving on 5th March 1931. So my dear children, so what was this Gandhi-Irving Pact? Already I have told you before the civil disobedience movements videos lecture that Gandhiji had written 11 demands, and according to that we see the Gandhi-Irving Pact. And in Gandhi-Irving Pact we see Gandhi is talking about the releasing of political prisoners. Then the British government, they are agreed to have the peaceful picketing of liquor as well as the foreign clothes. Then they are permitting to collecting the manufacture of salt by persons who are near to the sea coast area, and at the same time they are restoring the confiscated property of the Satyagrahi. So these are the Gandhi-Irwin Pact. So my dear little children, here we understood that what was the Gandhi-Irwin Pact, which Gandhiji as well as the Lord Irwin were having the agreement with, releasing the political prisoners, permitting to have the peaceful picketing of liquor as well as the foreign clothes, at the same time permitting to collect as well as manufacture the salt who are near to the coastal sea area, and at the same time restoring the seizing property as well as the confiscated property by the Satyagrahis. So these are the Gandhi-Irwin Pact that has been signed by Gandhiji as well as Lord Irwin. So my dear children, after that Gandhiji is going to attend the second round table conference. So dear children, after the Gandhi-Irwin Pact, we see that Gandhiji is going to attend the round table conference, and in December 1931 Gandhiji went to London for the round table conference. But the round table conference, the discussions as well as the negotiations which had been broken, and he returned to India with having great disappointment. So my dear children, after the Gandhi-Irwin Pact, I have been telling you repeatedly that Gandhiji is going to London to attend the round table conference. But in the round table conference, the discussions, the negotiations, which seems to be very failure, it was broken down. So he returned to India with having great disappointment. And he began to understood that it is the government which had found a new cycle of repressing the political activities, the demonstrations of the Satyagrahis, and that is the reasons the false promises had been given by Divishri, the Lord Irwin. And we understood that the Ghaffar Khan, the Jawaharlal Nehru, they both were in jail. And when Gandhiji understood the brutal repressions of the British government, what Gandhiji did was he relaunched the civil disobedience movement. So my dear children, as I have told you that this Ghaffar Khan as well as the Jawaharlal Nehru both were in jail, and at the same time the Congress party had been declared illegal by the colonial government, and the colonial government had invented or made several kind of series to impose the public gatherings, the political demonstrations as well as the boycott activities. When such kind of repressing measures had been adopted by the British government during that time, with great apprehension, Gandhiji started the civil disobedience movements. And why Gandhiji was started the civil disobedience movements? Because here the British government had begun a new series of repressions, and when they had begun the new series of repressing the political activities as well as the demonstrations activity of the Satyagraha, during that time with great apprehension, Gandhiji started again the civil disobedience movement. So here, dear children, we understood that Mahatma Gandhi is relaunching the civil disobedience movements, and the civil disobedience movements in India, it continued for a year and it lasted for nearly 1 year, and in 1934, the movement, the civil disobedience movement was getting its momentum. It was losing its momentum. So my dear children, here we had understood the two topics. First I told you about the calling of the civil disobedience movement. Why Gandhiji called of the civil disobedience movement? Because the movement was getting very violent and nearly 1 lakh people were arrested. The women were beaten up. The freedom fighter, the Ghaffar Khan, Jawaharlal Nehru, all these freedom fighters were taken into jail. And after that we see Gandhiji is entering into the Gandhi-Irwin Pact. And after that he is going to London to attend the round table conference. And in the round table conference the accord is useless. He is returning to India with a great disappointment, and he understood that it is the British government, the colonial government had begun the new repression activities, and because of that this colonial government, they declared the Congress party is illegal, and they developed the new repression measure in order to stop the nationalism movements in India. And when Gandhiji understood the reality, then with great apprehension he relaunched the civil disobedience movement. Thank you my dear children for listening to me.